Hey, it's King McKay. Now I wanted to take a little bit longer to talk about this really interesting comparison I've seen in the Stark family, where inside the universe of A Game of Thrones, Ned Stark views himself and his family as honourable men. They're very upfront and honest. The man who passes the sentence swings the sword. They're not in these corrupt, southern lords playing the politics and all that kind of stuff. Except, if we look from the reader's perspective, from an outside point of view, the way that George R. R. Martin frames this house, we can tell that the house is quite counter to all those values. Almost every character in the entire family doesn't really match these honourable themes. And they actually use these arcs to explore the idea of whether that is a true foundation of this universe at all, whether any family is like this, or whether the ideas of exploring that at all is even good for people. So let's get into this video. The Starks, Lairs, Turncloaks and Oathebreakers. Now, if we're going to talk about House Stark, we have to begin with Eddard. For all the honour and honesty prescribed to Ned Stark, he actually lies a considerable amount in the series. And not just small lies that impact the entire realm. Of course, there's a giant lie about Jon Snow. But this is a lie the show quite clearly shows internal struggle for. Understanding people see this as one blight on his record, and that's it. Other than that, he's this honourable, stoic man. But the lie about Lyanna is so much more grand than anything about Jon Snow. Her relationship with Rhaegar being consensual puts a huge dampener on the entire rebellion. Of course, there were so many more reasons the Mad King was overthrown. His absolute cruelty, killing off the Stark lords and then putting bounties on Robert and Ned's heads. But the whole Lyanna story would have changed the entire way it was dealt with. Rhaegar was calling a great council to remove his father. Robert could have backed him, made sure that the Mad King didn't have armies to take on Rhaegar's authority. The Starks, Baratheons, Tullys and Arryns could have all backed Rhaegar and went to this new era with who was described as a fantastic king, ruling justly with a new council and bringing stability to the realm again. Now, to be fair, Ned didn't know about any of this until well after the rebellion had been closing out and Rhaegar had died. But regardless, keeping this lie is huge. It is a ginormous burden on his life, and it directly relates to all of the main things he believes in. This is one of the main reasons he's probably stuck away in Winterfell rather than meeting with Robert more, helping him King's Landing, because he can't face him with the lie of Jon Snow and the lie of Lyanna. So those are big central pieces to his character and the ways that have informed him. There's also way more to indicate that he's not as honourable as a man as people believe. He's permeated with small, degrading lies his whole life. The lie of the fight between him and Arthur Dayne, and how Howland Reed just stabbed him in the back of the throat when Ned was well and truly defeated. And technically he gave up his honour and lied about everything right before his death to try and save Sansa. So the ironic theme that George R. R. Martin shows us with Ned's story as a Stark is it wasn't his honour that defined his life, but his lies. So what about a Stark you don't normally think of in this area? Arya. In the beginning of the story, she's quite blunt, tomboyish, and very Stark looking. But as her story progresses, she embodies the most anti-Stark themes I have ever seen. She changes her name consistently throughout the series. She's Arya, then Ari, then Lumpy Head, Lumpy Face, Stick Boy, Rabbit Killer, Weasel, Nymeria, Nan, Squimp, Wolf Girl, Salty, Cat of the Canals, Blind Biff, the Blind Girl, the Ugly Girl, Mercy, and No One. She trains in the shadows and in different ways, hiding herself at every step to become an assassin of the dark. She goes from a Stark with their saying of the man who passes the sentence swings the sword. No, the woman who passes the sentence hides himself as your wife and slits your throat and poisons your family. Arya's arc through thick and thin is an identity crisis. She's a lost wolf not knowing where she belongs. And in her story, it's kind of the opposite to Ned, where it's not her bad deeds that define her life, but the few exceptions of where her morals strike through. Alright, let's move on to some of the more obvious Starks. Robb. Robb in the story is obsessed with living up to his father's name. From the very beginning of his rule to the very end, he never gets to meet Eddard again. He was trained his entire life and raised to be this lord, and suddenly his father figure was ripped from him and imprisoned, and it was his job to get him back. He was thrown in the deep end with no more guidance, and only the kind of hindering hand of Cat to throw him astray. There's no doubt that he battles with honor and respect and authority the entire time, and he embodies more of someone trying to live up to the honor that was unrealistically put upon him that collapses an entire campaign. Him staying true to his honor and killing Lord Karstark, him staying true to his honor and marrying Jane Poole, him staying to his honor and going back to Walder Frey on his knees pleading, all of which brings him down. If only he knew that his also grandiose view of his father was tainted with lies. Maybe he would have understood the more nuanced view of interacting with the world, that no one's perfect and you can't be expected to be the outstanding man every time. So it wasn't just this oath breaking to the phrase that defined his character and how Stark there, but the lies of Ned before that have also informed those decisions. And then there's Jon, who is definitely a Stark, because it's not your genetics, but who raises you that defines the family you belong to. Now, of course, we see breaks in his morality and honor all the time. When he tries running from the Watch, when he kills Corin Halfhand and pretends to be a Turncloak, breaks his vows with Ygritte, and undermines and changes the mission of the Night's Watch, this kind of conservative, set-in-stone institution at the top of the world, isolated from everything. And if that sounds familiar, that's because that's exactly what House Stark is. That's exactly what House Stark is. And Jon Snow changes it all. He changes the view of the White Walkers, he changes the view of the Wildlings, he changes the way that the Night's Watch operates and tries to bring things back to life. He's willing to work with other sides and negotiate, bringing the Night's Watch into this new era, which has never been approached before. And this all comes from him challenging those views and foundations of his Stark life, and moving beyond them with the experience he has in his real life. Like Robb, these ideas of honor and manlyhood and honesty are this kind of like childhood veil, hiding them from the real realities of the world. And when they're thrust out of this kind of comfort zone called Winterfell, they have to quickly adjust how they view and interact with the world. And Robb tries to stay with that kind of false veil and dies trying, where Jon adapts and changes, then dies trying. Missed it by that much. Alright, then there's Sansa Stark, and she is the pinnacle to this entire story. As a character, she embodies this kind of morphing view of the Starks, as she views the world as lovey-dovey, stories and songs and honor and knights, but then through the corrupting influence of Cersei and her negative experiences and the Hound and all the shit she deals with the Vale and up north and Littlefinger, it shows her this more nuanced, branched view, that you can't line things into honest men and honorable men and whatever, but rather the grey spectrum of which every person lives upon, and how their actions and principles define them. We as the reader and viewer get to see this breaking of the Stark myth through her. And from everything I see from the story and her arc, she will also be the one that brings everything back together and forms a new Stark way and ethos that the family will continue upon. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. It's always great to dive into the Starks. They're a great family. Also, I've been doing some live streaming on this YouTube channel. If you haven't noticed already, we've been doing Vikings content and some Q&As and maybe some Game of Thrones streams down the line. So if you want to contribute to the discussion live with me, then make sure to click that bell to get notified when I'm doing that. Thank you.